Hey guys, today we begin with a man far from home, a sailor, a warrior, and a husband whose name echoes through centuries, Odysseus. You'll quietly drift through his long wandering journey, from battles beneath the burning sun of Troy to the whispering caves of one-eyed giants, from enchanted islands where time stands still to the haunting songs of sirens. Over calm, endless waters, you'll hear of gods who guide and punish, of loyal crewmen lost to storm and temptation, and of a wife who waits with quiet strength, weaving day after day, hoping for his return. Let the waves of time carry you through one of the oldest and most human stories ever told. Before you settle in and get comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. In the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. It's always fascinating to see our sleepy little myth-loving community stretch across the world. And if there's a particular myth, legend, or story you'd love to hear next, share it below. I'm always listening. Now, dim the lights, let your thoughts slow down, and let's drift gently into tonight's story. The dawn was slow and pale, creeping quietly over the walls of the ancient city of Troy. The sky, a soft shade of blue-gray, was barely touched by the rising sun's gentle light. Birds stirred somewhere far beyond the broken ramparts, their songs faint and distant, barely reaching the ears of those who lingered in the stillness of early morning. The air was thick, with a mingling of sea salt and dust, a scent carried from the nearby shore and the war-torn streets alike. The soft murmur of the Aegean waves echoed quietly against the city's stone walls, as if the sea itself whispered secrets of the long and grueling battle that had lasted for 10 endless years. Within the camp of the Greek warriors, silence settled like a heavy cloak, wrapping around the tents and scattered weapons. The men moved slowly, their bodies tired and worn, their faces shadowed by the weight of countless battles. The smell of sweat mixed with the faint smoke of campfires, where morning meals were prepared with slow care. The clinking of metal, the rustle of rough cloth, and the muted conversations formed a gentle background, nothing like the roaring clashes and thunderous cries of war that had filled the nights before. Now, only the soft sounds of a weary army waking from restless sleep remained. The sky above was soft and quiet, but beneath it, the tension was thick like fog. The last day of the Trojan War had arrived, but no one rushed to greet it with excitement or hope. Instead, there was a strange calm, the calm of those who have fought long and hard and who now waited, uncertain what the final moments would bring. Some warriors sat by their campfires, staring into the glowing embers as if seeking answers in their flickering dance. Others quietly sharpened their swords, their movements methodical and slow, like a ritual before the inevitable. The ancient city of Troy itself was a silent giant, standing tall and proud despite the scars of battle. Its massive stone walls, worn and battered, bore the marks of siege engines and flaming arrows. The towers rose into the sky, casting long shadows over the empty streets where once bustling markets and lively voices had filled the air. Now, the streets lay deserted, scattered with remnants of broken shields and discarded helmets. The smell of smoke lingered faintly in the air, a reminder of the fires that had ravaged the city in the previous days. The city's heart beat faintly beneath the ruins, as if holding on to the hope of survival. Far beyond the walls, the Greek ships lay anchored quietly in the harbor, their sails furled and masts still. The wooden hulls creaked softly as the gentle morning breeze swept over the water. On board, the soldiers prepared silently, packing their few belongings and tending to their wounds. The men's eyes were heavy, clouded with fatigue, but their hands were steady. They knew this day would decide their fate. The air was filled with the subtle scent of salted wood and seaweed, mixing with the faint aroma of roasting meat from the galley fires. Amid the quiet camp, one figure stood apart: Odysseus, the wily and clever king of Ithaca. His gaze wandered over the horizon, where the first golden rays began to touch the waves. His face was calm but thoughtful, as if a storm brewed deep within his mind. The lines around his eyes spoke of countless struggles, battles fought not only with swords, but with words and wit. His hands, strong and steady, rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, yet his heart was elsewhere, far from this land of war and bloodshed, in a place only he truly knew. Odysseus thought of his home, the island of Ithaca, a distant green jewel surrounded by the endless blue of the sea. He imagined the gentle rustle of olive trees in the soft wind, the warm sunlight kissing the hills, and the familiar smell of fresh bread baking in the village ovens. He thought of his wife, Penelope, patient and wise, waiting faithfully through the long years of his absence. He pictured his son, Telemachus, growing stronger each day, learning the ways of the world. These thoughts filled him with a bittersweet longing, a quiet ache that no victory in battle could ever soothe. Around him, the camp slowly stirred with the rhythm of morning routines. Men prepared their simple breakfast, poured wine mixed with water into small cups, broke stale bread, and salted olives. The soft clinking of pottery and the murmur of voices in low tones created a peaceful harmony that contrasted sharply with the fierce echoes of war. The air was tinged with the scent of herbs and fresh water drawn from the nearby stream. Somewhere nearby, a campfire crackled softly, sending gentle sparks into the cool air, and a faint wisp of smoke drifted upward, blending with the morning mist. As the day unfolded slowly, Odysseus walked among his men, offering quiet words of encouragement. His voice was low and steady, soothing like a calm sea. He spoke of the journey ahead, not with boastful pride, but with gentle reassurance, reminding them of their strength and courage. His stories were not filled with tales of glory or conquest, but with memories of home, of peace, and the promise of rest after the long struggle. His words floated through the camp like a soft breeze, wrapping the men in a blanket of hope. The last day of the Trojan War was a day of contrast, a day where the violence of the past met the fragile hope for the future. The quiet before the storm held a strange beauty, like the stillness before the first drop of rain falls on thirsty earth. The warriors prepared themselves not only for battle, but for the possibility of returning home. Each moment was heavy with unspoken fears and silent prayers. The scent of the sea mingled with the dust of the battlefield, carrying the promise of journeys yet to come. In the distance, the sounds of the city's waking life began to stir: a faint cry of a child, the clatter of a cart over cobblestones, the gentle murmur of voices from behind shuttered windows. These small, ordinary sounds seemed fragile against the backdrop of war, yet they carried the strength of life itself. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the weary soldiers, touching their armor and faces with a golden glow. Shadows lengthened and shortened as time moved slowly, marking the passing hours with quiet dignity. Odysseus paused for a moment, breathing in the crisp morning air. He closed his eyes briefly, feeling the coolness fill his lungs, the salty breeze brushing against his skin. In that brief stillness, the sounds of battle seemed distant. replaced by the gentle whisper of leaves rustling in the wind and the soft lap of waves against the shore. The memories of the past 10 years, the bloodshed, the loss, the endless struggle faded, replaced by the fragile hope of peace and reunion. And so, the last day of the Trojan War unfolded with quiet grace, a moment suspended between the past and the future, between the noise of battle and the hush of homecoming. The warriors prepared to face whatever the day would bring, carrying in their hearts the dreams of distant shores, the warmth of loved ones, and the enduring hope that after the long night, dawn would finally break. Odysseus stood quietly at the edge of the camp, his eyes tracing the distant horizon where the sea met the sky in a seamless blur of blue. The endless ocean stretched before him like a vast living canvas, its gentle waves sparkling softly under the warming touch of the sun. Yet, despite the beauty of the sea, his heart was heavy. It was not the wild thrill of battle or the roar of victory that filled him now, but a deep, yearning Aeolus, longing for a place far beyond the reach of war and wandering. He thought of Ithaca, his home small and green, nestled quietly among the rolling hills and olive groves, a place where time moved slowly, like the gentle flow of a nearby river. He pictured the stone walls of his house, worn smooth by years of sun and rain, the scent of fresh herbs growing in the garden just beyond the door, the soft light filtering through the leaves of fig trees, casting dappled shadows on the earth, the cool breeze carrying the faint smell of salt from the sea nearby. This was the world he longed for, the simple, peaceful life left behind in the years lost to war. In his mind, Odysseus saw his wife Penelope sitting quietly by the hearth, weaving her endless tapestry. Her hands moved with calm precision, threads of soft wool sliding through her fingers like water. She was patient and strong, a beacon of hope in the darkness of his long absence. He imagined the lines of worry around her eyes, softened by the glow of the fire, her gentle voice humming a song only the walls of their home had ever heard. The thought of her brought warmth to his chest, a light to guide him through the endless nights. And there was his son, Telemachus, still young, but growing strong each day. Odysseus pictured him walking the dusty paths of the village, learning the ways of their people, hearing stories of his father's bravery whispered by the elders. He imagined the boy's eager eyes filled with wonder and pride, waiting for the day they would stand together, father and son side by side. This vision gave Odysseus strength, even as the weight of years and battles pressed down on his shoulders. But alongside this longing, there was also uncertainty. Would he ever return? Would the sea, vast and unpredictable, allow him passage home? Would the gods look kindly upon him? These questions lingered in the quiet spaces between his thoughts, like shadows in the fading light. Yet Odysseus did not let fear take hold. Instead, he breathed deeply of the salty air, letting the breeze carry away his doubts, if only for a moment. As the camp around him slowly stirred to life, Odysseus remained still, lost in the quiet rhythms of his heart. The gentle crackle of a nearby fire, the murmur of voices as men prepared their morning, the distant cry of a seagull circling high above all blended into a soft, comforting symphony. It was a world far removed from the clang of swords and the chaos of battle. A world he longed to return to, and one he carried with him through every step of his journey. He touched the hilt of his sword gently, not as a warrior ready for battle, but as a man holding onto the hope of home. His fingers lingered on the worn leather grip, feeling the familiar grooves shaped by years of use. It was a reminder of all he had endured and the many roads still ahead. Yet, beneath the armor and the scars, the man beneath it all was simply a traveler seeking peace. Time seemed to slow as Odysseus looked once more toward the horizon, the waves whispering softly their ancient song. The sun climbed steadily, casting a warm glow over the camp and the sleeping city beyond. And though the war still raged, though the future remained uncertain, in that quiet moment, Odysseus carried with him the enduring flame of hope, the hope of a home waiting patiently at the edge of the sea. The morning unfolded slowly, like a soft breath drawn deep and steady. Light spilled gently across the land, brushing the tops of olive trees and weaving gold into the fabric of the world. The camp of the Greek warriors lay quiet beneath the rising sun, wrapped in a gentle hush that seemed to hold time itself still. Tents, made of heavy cloth and patched from long journeys, stood in neat rows, their flaps fluttering faintly in the cool breeze. Each one held stories of rest, of dreams, of whispered plans and quiet fears. Around the camp, the earth was soft with dew. Tiny droplets clung to blades of grass, sparkling like scattered jewels in the morning light. The smell of damp earth mingled with the faint smoke rising from smoldering campfires where small flames flickered lazily, sending delicate ribbons of smoke into the clear blue sky. The air was fresh and cool, touched by the scent of pine and salt from the nearby sea. Occasionally, the rustle of leaves or the soft footsteps of a soldier moving about broke the stillness. Near the water's edge, the Greek ships rested patiently, their wooden hulls dark and worn from years of sailing. The ships rocked gently in the calm harbor, cradled by the rhythm of small waves. Their sails were furled tightly, folded like sleeping wings waiting for the wind to carry them home. Masts reached skyward like silent sentinels, casting long, delicate shadows on the sand. The scent of wet wood and seaweed rose from the decks, mingling with the sharp tang of salt and the faint aroma of tar used to seal the seams. Fishermen and sailors moved quietly among the vessels, tending to ropes and checking the rigging with practiced hands. Their voices were low, a gentle murmur blending with the sound of water lapping softly against the hulls. Occasionally, a gull called overhead, its cry stretching across the harbor like a thread of wildness in the peaceful morning. Nets were folded neatly, oars laid aside, and small barrels of fresh water glistened in the early sun. The camp itself was alive with subtle movement. Men stirred in their tents, stretching weary limbs, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Some lit small fires to warm the chill air, adding wood with soft clinks and careful motions. The smell of roasting meat and baking bread began to drift, gentle and inviting, wrapping the camp in comfort. Pots simmered quietly, releasing fragrant steam that mingled with the crispness of the morning. Around the fire pits, groups gathered slowly. Words were few, voices low. Some shared simple meals of olives, cheese, and dry bread, washed down with watered wine. Hands moved slowly, deliberate and calm, a stark contrast to the chaos of battle they had left behind. There was an unspoken understanding among the men, a shared exhaustion, a quiet hope, and a patient waiting for what the day would bring. Beyond the tents and ships, the landscape stretched out a patchwork of green fields, rocky outcrops, and distant hills. The sea, calm and endless, shimmered softly under the sun's first rays. The gentle breeze carried whispers of the waves, the scent of blooming wildflowers, and the faint hum of insects awakening to the new day. In this peaceful morning, time seemed to stretch and fold upon itself. Every sound, every scent, every flicker of light invited the mind to wander slowly, to breathe deeply, and to settle into the calm rhythm of life between journeys. The camp and the ships, the land and the sea, they all held their breath together, waiting for the moment when the long voyage would begin again, waiting for the call of adventure, but also for the quiet return to the place called home. In the quiet depths of his mind, Odysseus journeyed far away from the clamor of war, beyond the restless waves and stormy skies, to a place bathed in soft golden light, his home, Ithaca. The island lay gently nestled in the embrace of the sea, a green jewel sparkling under the sun. Hills rolled softly into valleys, where olive groves spread their silver leaves and vineyards climbed the slopes with patient grace. The air smelled of wild thyme and salt, mingled with the warmth of sun-baked earth. He pictured the modest house where he had lived before the long years of battily sturdy stone dwelling, weathered by wind and rain, yet standing firm. Its walls were thick and whitewashed, cool to the touch in summer, warm in the embrace of the hearth. The roof was made of clay tiles, reddish-brown like the earth itself, worn smooth by time. Around the house, a small garden flourished with herbs and flowers, their scents drifting gently on the breeze. Lavender, rosemary, and sage grew in neat rows, tended with care by hands long since gone from his sight. Inside, the hearth glowed softly, casting a gentle light that danced on the walls. The air carried the faint scent of wood smoke, mingled with the aroma of baking bread and simmering stew. It was a place of quiet comfort, where the ordinary sounds of life filled the rooms, the crackling fire, the rustle of woven cloth, the soft footfalls on the stone floor. And there was Penelope, his wife, the calm center of this world. He saw her sitting gracefully by the loom, her fingers moving steadily as she wove her endless tapestry. The golden threads slipped through her hands like flowing water, each stitch a silent prayer for his safe return. Her eyes were steady and wise, reflecting the patience of years, the strength of love that did not waver even in absence. The soft rustle of her gown, the gentle sigh as she worked, these were the melodies that filled his memory. Odysseus thought of the quiet moments they had shared, the simple meals by firelight, the soft conversations beneath the stars, the way her hand fit perfectly in his. He remembered the laughter that had echoed through the rooms, the warmth of her smile, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat beside his own. In those memories, time stood still, and the world beyond faded into a gentle haze. And then there was his son, Telemachus, still young, yet growing into the man he was meant to be. Odysseus saw him wandering the rocky paths of the island, curious eyes wide with wonder. The boy's footsteps were light, but sure, tracing the way of their ancestors. He imagined the soft breeze lifting his hair, the sun warming his skin, and the proud smile that would one day greet him at the door. Telemachus carried the promise of the future, the continuation of a legacy born of strength and love. The island itself seemed to breathe around them, the gentle rustle of olive branches, the distant song of birds in the morning, the rhythmic crashing of waves on the shore. The sky stretched wide and endless, painted with soft clouds drifting lazily in the warm breeze. Everything was calm, steady, and alive. In these moments, Odysseus held tightly to the fragile thread of hope, the hope that he would one day cross the sea again, step upon the familiar earth of Ithaca, and find his way back to Penelope and Telemachus. That hope was a light shining through the darkness of uncertainty, a quiet strength to carry him onward. The camp slowly came to life with the gentle rhythm of preparation, like a quiet heartbeat in the early morning light. Odysseus moved among his men with calm purpose, each step measured and steady, like the unfolding of a slow, deliberate plan. Around him, the soft rustle of canvas tents and the muted clatter of armor and weapons filled the air, blending with the distant murmur of the sea and the whisper of the wind through olive branches. The warriors, still wrapped in the haze of sleep, began to stir. Some stretched their limbs beneath heavy cloaks, muscles aching from long days and restless nights. Others tended to their weapons, running fingers along the smooth steel of swords, checking the sharpness of their blades with careful attention. The scent of oil and leather mingled with the crisp morning air, a quiet promise of readiness and resolve. Near the shore, the ships awaited patiently, their wooden hulls gleaming faintly as the sun climbed higher. Sailors moved with practiced grace, tightening ropes and adjusting rigging. The gentle creak of pulleys and the slap of water against the sides, creating a soothing symphony of motion. The sails, still furled against the calm breeze, shimmered softly in the light, their white fabric waiting to catch the wind that would carry the fleet toward home. Odysseus paused by one ship's prow, running his hand along the polished wood, feeling the cool smoothness beneath his fingers. The texture spoke of countless voyages, of storms weathered and seas crossed. Nearby, bundles of fresh supplies were loaded, carefully jugs of water, baskets of bread and dried fish, barrels filled with olives and figs. The smell of ripe fruit mixed with the salt and wood smoke, creating a comforting scent of nourishment and hope. The men gathered in small groups, sharing quiet words and gentle laughter, easing the tension of the coming journey with moments of connection. Some exchanged tales of past adventures, their voices low and warm like a gentle fire, while others sat in thoughtful silence, eyes fixed on the shimmering horizon. Odysseus himself offered calm words of encouragement, reminding them not only of the trials behind, but of the promise ahead, a promise of return, of reunion, of rest. In the heart of the camp, fires were rekindled, their soft glow casting flickering shadows on faces worn but determined. The crackle of kindling and the gentle pop of burning wood blended with the murmurs of preparation, wrapping the morning in a cocoon of warmth and light. Around these fires, cups of watered wine were passed, the bitter sweetness comforting in the chill of dawn. Every detail mattered in these moments: the careful folding of sails, the securing of cargo, the steadying of nerves. Each action was slow, deliberate, like the turning of a great wheel that would soon set the fleet in motion. The weight of years and battles pressed lightly now, softened by the shared resolve to move forward, to cross the waves once more toward the land they dreamed of. As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the camp held its breath. The time for waiting was ending. Soon, the call to sail would sound, and the ships would glide from the harbor like birds taking flight. But for now, in this gentle moment before departure, there was only preparation, the quiet gathering of strength, the weaving of hope, the steady heartbeat of a journey about to begin. The morning sun had risen higher now, casting its warm and gentle light across the harbor where the Greek ships rested, ready to begin their journey home. The air was filled with a quiet excitement, a soft anticipation that fluttered like a gentle breeze through the camp. Slowly, the men gathered on the sandy shore, their footsteps light and careful, their faces calm yet filled with the unspoken hope of what lay ahead. Odysseus stood near the water's edge, watching as the sailors moved with practiced ease. Their hands grasped ropes and oars, their movements fluid and unhurried. The ships, strong and steady, seemed to breathe with life. Wooden beams, polished, smooth by time, sails folded, like wings waiting to spread. The gentle rocking of the hulls mirrored the rhythmic pulse of the sea, steady and soothing. Voices were soft, conversations brief, carried on the light wind that brushed the faces of those preparing to leave. The salty scent of the ocean mixed with the earthy aroma of damp wood and fresh ropes, creating a comforting tapestry of smells that promised journey and adventure. Above, seagulls circled lazily, their cries blending with the soft splash of waves lapping against the shore. Men climbed aboard the ships with care, settling into their places with quiet determination. Oars were lifted and dipped into the cool water in a slow, measured cadence. The captain's voice, calm and low, gave steady commands that drifted over the gentle rush of the sea. Slowly, the fleet began to move, gliding away from the harbor as if waking from a long sleep. Odysseus stood at the prow of his own ship, the wind tugging softly at his cloak, the spray of the sea cooling his skin. His gaze was fixed on the fading outline of the camp, the tents growing smaller, the familiar shapes slipping behind the horizon. Yet his heart was steady, full of the quiet strength of one who knows that every ending is also a beginning. The ships sailed in slow procession, their sails unfurling gently to catch the morning breeze. The sound of oars dipping and rising became a soothing rhythm, like the heartbeat of the sea itself. The waters shimmered beneath the sunlight, sparkling like a path of scattered diamonds leading away from the shore and toward the vast unknown. Around Odysseus, the men worked in harmony, their actions synchronized like a carefully choreographed dance. Their faces were calm, eyes bright with the steady light of hope. The sea stretched endlessly before them, a vast, living expanse waiting to carry them forward. As the ships moved farther from land, the sounds of the camp faded, replaced by the soft murmur of waves and the whisper of wind through the rigging. The world grew quiet in a way that was both peaceful and profound, a quiet filled with promise. And so, the journey began. Slowly, gently, with the soft caress of the sea and the steady beat of oars, Odysseus and his men left behind the shores of Troy. They sailed forward, carried not only by wind and wave, but by dreams of home, by the pull of distant shores and waiting hearts. The morning air was cool and crisp, carrying with it the gentle promise of a new day. A soft breeze stirred lightly, brushing the faces of the sailors and tugging playfully at the edges of their cloaks. The sky stretched wide and clear above them, painted in pale shades of blue that deepened slowly as the sun climbed higher. Wisps of thin clouds drifted lazily, drifting like feathers across the endless expanse. Beneath the ships, the sea gleamed with quiet energy. The water was calm, its surface smooth and glassy, reflecting the light like a mirror broken into countless shimmering fragments. Small waves lapped gently against the hulls, their rhythmic motion a soothing lullaby to those aboard. The soft splash of water mingled with the whisper of the wind in the sails, creating a delicate symphony of sounds, soft, steady, and comforting. The scent of the sea was fresh and invigorating. It carried the sharp tang of salt, mingled with the faintest hints of seaweed and damp wood. This scent clung to the air, wrapping around the men like a familiar cloak, grounding them to the endless waters that stretched beyond the horizon. It was a scent of journeys begun, of endless possibilities, and of the wild, untamed beauty of the open ocean. The breeze grew just a touch stronger, stirring ripples across the water's surface, teasing the sails into gentle fluttering. The warmth of the sun kissed the skin, blending with the cool breath of the sea air. Together, they wove a delicate balance, a dance between warmth and chill, between light and shadow. The waves whispered softly, their voices low and steady, as if sharing ancient secrets with those who dared to listen. The water moved with graceful ease, carrying the ships forward on their path. The gentle rocking of the vessels beneath the men's feet was both calming and hypnotic, a constant reminder of the sea's endless embrace. Around them, the world was vast and open. The horizon stretched far, a thin line where sky met sea in perfect harmony. The colors shifted slowly with the passage of time, from the soft pastels of dawn to the richer blues of midday. The day breathed in quiet, steady rhythms, inviting rest, reflection, and gentle dreams. As the fleet sailed further from the gentle embrace of the harbor, the calm sea began to change. The once smooth surface rippled and rose as if stirred by unseen hands beneath the waves. Small swells grew steadily, rolling and tumbling with soft but insistent energy. The wind shifted, carrying cooler breath and whispering hints of something more restless beyond the horizon. The men on the ships felt the subtle shift in the air and water. Their steady rhythm of rowing faltered for a moment as the boats rocked more noticeably, creaking under the gentle but growing force of the waves. A quiet unease settled among them, not sharp fear, but a cautious awareness of the sea's changing mood. Eyes flicked to the darkening swell, brows furrowed in thoughtful silence. The waves rose a little higher now, swelling like gentle hills made of deep blue and green. The spray from their crests danced lightly in the sunlight, sparkling like a mist of tiny diamonds. The ships responded with slow, rocking motions, first a gentle sway, then a deeper roll. The oars dipped and rose unevenly, the sailors adjusting their movements to keep pace with the rhythm of the sea. Whispers passed quietly among the men, voices hushed and low. The salt air carried the soft murmurs of concern, the tightening grip of cautious nerves. Yet, even in this subtle tension, there was a shared trust in their captain and in the strength of their vessels. They knew the sea could be both friend and foe, and their courage was a quiet flame flickering steadily against the gathering shadows. Odysseus stood firm, a calm presence amid the gentle turmoil. His eyes scanned the waves with quiet understanding, reading the language of the sea as one who had listened long and well. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but steady words that soothed like a balm, reminding the men of their skill, their experience, and the promise of calmer waters ahead. Though the sea had begun to stir, the journey was still young. The waves were rougher, yes, but not yet fierce. The wind carried the scent of salt and freedom, urging them onward. The men adjusted their grip on the oars, steadying themselves as the ships continued their slow, measured dance with the restless sea. And so, beneath the shifting sky, the fleet sailed on, embracing the gentle challenge of the first storm, guided by steady hands and quiet hearts. The ships themselves were sturdy and proud, crafted from dark, weathered wood that gleamed softly in the sunlight. Each vessel was built with care and skill, designed to glide smoothly over the waves, cutting through the water like swift birds taking flight. The hulls curved gracefully, their shapes shaped by the hands of master shipwrights who knew the sea's secrets well. The decks were polished smooth by years of use, worn by the steps of countless sailors who had braved storms and calm alike. The sails hung like gentle clouds, their pale fabrics catching the wind with soft whispers. Ropes and rigging stretched taut, humming quietly as they adjusted to the changing breeze. Oars, long and strong, dipped rhythmically into the sea, their steady strokes guiding the ships forward with quiet power. The scent of salt and pine resin mingled in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of tar used to seal every seam. At the helm of his ship, Odysseus stood with quiet confidence. His posture was calm and sure, a steady hand on the wheel, eyes attentive but untroubled. He moved with practiced ease, every gesture measured and deliberate, like a man in harmony with both his vessel and the sea beneath it. His cloak fluttered softly in the breeze, and the lines of his face, etched by years of struggle and wisdom, softened in the gentle light. Around him, the crew worked seamlessly, responding to his silent commands and subtle signals. Odysseus spoke rarely, but when he did, his voice carried a soothing steadiness that settled the men's nerves. His presence was a beacon of calm amid the shifting sea, a reminder that no matter how restless the waters, they could be mastered with patience and skill. He watched the horizon with quiet vigilance, reading the clouds and the waves like an ancient text. His mind was sharp, aware of every subtle change in wind and water, yet his spirit remained unhurried, flowing with the rhythm of the sea. There was a serene strength in his gaze, a trust in the journey and in the hands that guided it. As the ships moved steadily onward, Odysseus embodied the heart of the voyage, steadfast, wise, and quietly determined. He was both leader and guardian, navigating not just the physical waters, but the shifting tides of hope and fear within every soul aboard. The sea stretched out around them like a vast, shimmering blanket, its surface catching the light in 1,000 gentle sparkles. Each wave moved with quiet grace, rising and falling in slow, measured rhythms that seemed to breathe with the pulse of the world itself. The water glided smoothly beneath the ships, cool and clear, reflecting the endless sky above in hues of blue and silver. Soft ripples traced delicate patterns across the surface, weaving and unweaving like silk threads carried on a gentle breeze. The sun's rays danced lightly on the crests of the waves, casting tiny diamonds that flickered and faded with each ebb and flow. Here and there, a school of fish slipped silently through the depths, their scales catching the light in fleeting flashes before disappearing beneath the surface. The horizon was a calm line where sea met sky in perfect harmonia, peaceful meeting of two vast worlds. The colors shifted gently with the passing hours, from the soft pastels of dawn to the warm golds of midday, and later to the deep blues of approaching evening. Clouds drifted lazily, their reflections rippling softly on the water below. The gentle rocking of the ships lulled the men into a quiet reverie. The soothing sound of water brushing against the hulls, the steady splash of oars dipping and rising, and the whisper of the breeze through the sails created a lullaby of natural sounds. It was a melody both timeless and ever-changing, a song of the sea that had carried countless travelers before them. In the midst of this tranquil world, the worries of the journey softened and faded, replaced by the simple beauty of the moment. The sea, with all its vastness and mystery, offered a serene embrace, endless expanse of calm that invited rest and reflection. As the ships sailed steadily onward, the water around them remained a gentle companion, a mirror of peace in the ever-moving world. As the ships glided gently through the calm waters, a new land slowly emerged on the horizon, faint silhouette against the soft hues of the sky. The island was wrapped in a shimmering haze, like a dream just beyond reach, its outlines blurred and mysterious. Rolling hills covered in thick greenery rose and fell beneath a sky brushed with wisps of pale clouds. The air seemed to carry a different scent, here a mix of sweet blossoms and damp earth, mingling with the fresh saltiness of the sea. The shore was quiet and inviting, lined with smooth pebbles that glistened faintly under the soft sunlight. Tall trees stretched their branches outward, their leaves whispering gently in the breeze, casting cool shadows over patches of vibrant wildflowers and soft moss. The waves lapped tenderly against the beach, their gentle rhythm matching the slow pulse of the island itself. It was a place untouched by harshness, where time seemed to slow and breathe with ease. Odysseus and his men looked upon this mysterious island with a mixture of curiosity and calm. The mood was soft and expectant, like stepping into a new story unfolding slowly before them. The air felt warmer here, filled with the delicate hum of insects and the faint call of distant birds hidden deep within the forest. Light filtered through the canopy in golden beams, creating patterns of shade and glow on the forest floor. The men prepared to step ashore with care, their movements slow and deliberate. The sand beneath their feet was cool and soft, a gentle cushion for tired bodies. Around them, the island's quiet beauty wrapped like a comforting blanket, an invitation to rest, to linger, and to listen to the whispers of a place unlike any they had known before. The world here seemed suspended in a peaceful pause, a moment caught between the past and what was yet to come. The island held its secrets close, waiting patiently to reveal its stories in time. The people of the island moved with an easy grace, blending seamlessly into the gentle rhythm of their surroundings. Their skin was bronzed by the warm sun, and their eyes held a calm, knowing light, as if they carried the secrets of the land within them. Dressed in simple, flowing garments woven from soft fibers, they walked barefoot over the earth, feeling the cool soil and soft moss beneath their feet. Their village was nestled quietly among the trees, a collection of modest huts made from wood, leaves, and woven grasses. Smoke rose gently from small hearths, curling upward in thin, lazy spirals that mingled with the fragrant air. The scent of fresh herbs and ripe fruits filled the space, wrapping the village in a warm, inviting embrace. The locals gathered in small groups to share their meals, sitting together on mats of woven reeds. Their food was simple but nourishing: fresh fruits plucked from the trees, root vegetables dug from the fertile soil, and fragrant herbs that lent color and flavor to their dishes. Bowls of honey, thick and golden, glistened in the sunlight, while nuts and seeds were scattered like treasures among the plates. At the center of their diet was a curious and delicate fruit, the lotus. Its petals were soft and pale, like the dawn sky, and its taste was gentle and sweet. The locals ate the lotus with quiet reverence, savoring its subtle flavors and the calm it seemed to bring. They spoke little as they ate, their voices low and peaceful, as if sharing not just food, but a moment of connection with the island itself. The air was filled with a sense of contentment, a slow and steady peace that seemed to settle over all who lived here. Time moved differently on this island, flowing with a softness that wrapped around the villagers like a gentle tide. It was a place where hunger was quieted not just by food, but by the soothing touch of the land and the shared comfort of simple life. The lotus fruit was unlike anything the sailors had ever known. Its delicate petals unfolded like soft silk, pale and shimmering with a subtle glow that seemed to hold the light of dawn itself. As they reached out to touch it, the skin felt smooth and cool, almost weightless in their hands. The scent was gentle and sweet, a quiet perfume that floated softly on the air, mingling hints of honey, wildflowers, and fresh morning dew. When tasted, the lotus revealed layers of subtle sweetness, like the slow melting of sugar on the tongue. It was fresh and pure, with a hint of creaminess and a delicate floral note that lingered pleasantly long after the first bite. Each mouthful seemed to calm the senses, drawing the eater into a quiet, dreamy state. The fruit's texture was tender but firm, yielding easily under gentle pressure, releasing its soothing essence, slowly and deliberately. The aroma of the lotus seemed to wrap around the sailors like a soft embrace, its calming presence weaving through their thoughts and gently easing away the sharp edges of weariness. It was as if the fruit carried a secret magic, a silent spell that whispered peace and rest to those who tasted it. The warmth of the sun, the cool sea breeze, and the sweet scent of lotus combined to create a world suspended in gentle stillness. As the sailors ate, their minds drifted slowly, carried on waves of soft, pleasant sensation. Their eyes grew heavy, their breaths deepened, and a serene calm settled over their hearts. The worries of the journey faded, replaced by a quiet contentment that seemed to stretch time and space into a slow, endless dream. The lotus did not just fill their bodies, it soothed their spirits. It was a moment of pure softness, where the relentless pull of the sea and the urgency of their quest melted away into the tranquil embrace of the island's gift. As the sailors savored the lotus fruit, a subtle transformation began to take hold. Their bodies, weary from long days at sea and the burdens of battle, relaxed more deeply than they had in many moons. Muscles loosened, shoulders dropped their heavy weight, and tired eyes softened, growing glassy with a dreamy calm. The once sharp edge of fatigue dulled into a gentle haze, like a soft fog settling over a quiet morning. Minds that had been tense and alert slowly drifted into a gentle wandering. Thoughts grew slow and fragmented, as if carried on a light breeze that whispered through the leaves. The urgency of their journey faded into the background, replaced by a serene stillness that wrapped around each man like a warm cloak. Conversations grew quieter, voices trailing off into murmurs and pauses filled with peaceful silence. The air seemed to thicken with a sweet, soothing haze, wrapping the camp in a cocoon of calm. Some sailors leaned against the trees or lay back on the soft earth, their breathing deep and even, caught in the tender embrace of restful dreams. Others stared into the distance with vacant, gentle eyes, as if watching distant memories drift by on invisible currents. Even the colors of the island appeared to soften and blur, the vibrant greens and bright flowers fading into muted pastels under the spell of the lotus. Time itself seemed to slow, each moment stretching languidly into the next as the sailors surrendered to the fruit's quiet enchantment. It was a peaceful, gentle surrender, not one of defeat, but of release from all worry and desire. Yet beneath this calm, a subtle danger lingered. The sailor spirits drifted away from the urgent call of home, caught in the gentle web of the island's spell. Their hearts no longer yearned for the distant shores of Ithaca. Instead, they found comfort here, in the slow, unchanging rhythm of the Lotus Eater's world. The weight of their quest seemed to lift, replaced by a languid contentment that made rising and leaving feel distant and unnecessary. Odysseus watched this quiet change with growing concern, his sharp mind recognizing the invisible chains forming around his men. He understood the power of the lotus not as a mere fruit, but as a subtle captor of will, a gentle thief of purpose. The sailors, once full of strength and resolve, now seemed to float on the edge of forgetting, caught in the sweet haze that dulled their senses and softened their hearts. This moment was a delicate balance between peace and perilla, soft, seductive trap that threatened to hold them forever in its gentle grasp. Odysseus stood quietly among his men, his gaze calm but filled with quiet urgency. He saw the gentle spell the lotus had cast upon them, the dreamy haze that dulled their senses and softened their hearts. Yet he knew that their journey was not yet complete. that the road home still stretched long and winding before them. With steady resolve, he began the delicate task of bringing his sailors back from the island's gentle enchantment. He moved slowly and carefully, like a shepherd guiding a flock through a mist. His voice, when he spoke, was low and soothing, a soft melody that cut through the fog of lethargy without startling or alarming. "Come, my friends," he whispered, his words weaving a thread of light through the quiet haze. "The sea calls us onward. Our homes wait beyond the waves." Odysseus did not rush or command. Instead, he walked among them, touching shoulders gently, meeting eyes with steady kindness. His presence was a beacon of calm strength, a steady anchor in a sea of drifting thoughts. He reminded them of the scent of salt air, the feel of the ship's wood beneath their hands, and the promise of the lands they longed for. Slowly, like the first rays of dawn chasing away night, the fog began to lift. He urged the men to rise, speaking softly of their families, their homes, and the tales yet to be told upon their return. "Remember Ithaca," he said, "the olive trees, the quiet hills, the hearth where your loved ones wait." These words stirred flickers of longing deep within their hearts, faint embers that the Lotus had tried to smother. With tender patience, Odysseus helped steady their steps as they left the shaded groves and soft sands of the island behind. The men's limbs, once heavy and slow, regained their strength with each passing moment. The weight of the Lotus's enchantment lifted gradually, replaced by the steady rhythm of the sea and the familiar sway of the ships. He guided them gently to the shore, encouraging them to feel the cool touch of the water and the firm grip of the oars in their hands. The sounds of the waves and the calls of seabirds seemed to sing a song of awakening, drawing the sailors back to wakefulness. Odysseus stood firm at the prow, his eyes scanning the horizon for the way forward, steady and sure. The men looked to him with growing clarity, their eyes clearing as the haze faded. They breathed in deeply, the sharp tang of salt filling their lungs and rekindling the fire within. The distant blue of the sea called to them once more, stirring a hunger for the journey's end. Slowly but surely, the sailors returned to themselves alert, determined and ready. Odysseus's care and quiet strength had been their lifeline, a soft hand pulling them from the gentle snare of forgetfulness. With the island fading behind them, the fleet set sail again, cutting through the waves with renewed purpose. The Lotus remained a memorial whisper of a place where time paused, but the call of home proved stronger. And so, with hearts rekindled and spirits steady, Odysseus and his men continued onward, carried by the wind and the endless hope that guided every step of their long voyage. The small boats slipped quietly through the calm waters, edging closer to the rugged shoreline of a new and wild land. The cliffs rose steep and jagged, their rocky faces weathered by wind and sea, streaked with moss and small, stubborn patches of grass. The waves whispered softly as they kissed the shore, sending gentle ripples over smooth stones and scattered shells. The air was cool and fresh, tinged with the sharp scent of salt and earth, carrying a quiet stillness that seemed to hold its breath. The men disembarked carefully, their feet touching the coarse, uneven sand with soft steps. Around them, the landscape was raw and untamed. Twisted olive trees clung to rocky slopes, their leaves flickering gently in the light breeze. Tall grasses swayed softly, and the distant call of seabirds echoed faintly over the cliffs. The world here felt older, quieter, as if time itself had slowed to a gentle pulse. Ahead, nestled among the rocks, lay the entrance to a great cave. Its mouth yawned wide and dark, framed by rough stone jagged and worn, like the open maw of some ancient creature. Shadows pooled deeply within, swallowing the faint light that dared to enter. The air near the cave was cool and still, carrying a subtle dampness and the faint earthy smell of stone and moss. The sailors paused, their movements slowing as the silence wrapped around them. No birds sang here. No breeze stirred the heavy air. Even the gentle crash of waves seemed muffled, as if the very land held a secret breath. The stillness was profound, deep quiet that settled into the bones, inviting careful footsteps and hushed voices. Odysseus stood at the edge of the cave's shadow, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. He felt the weight of the silence like a living thing, pressing gently but firmly against the senses. The men gathered close, their breaths slow and measured, hearts beating softly in the still air. Each step forward was deliberate, careful, a dance with the unknown in a place untouched by the sun. The world outside faded away, replaced by the cool, heavy darkness inside the cave. Sounds were swallowed here, and even the faintest noise seemed to echo endlessly, lost in the vast space. The air was thick with mystery, filled with the scent of damp stone and the whisper of ancient secrets. Deep within the shadowed cave, a figure stirred, a presence vast and imposing, yet strangely silent in the stillness. Polyphemus, the great Cyclops, lay resting among the scattered stones and rough-hewn walls. His form was immense, towering above the men like a living mountain shaped by ancient hands. The curve of his massive shoulders stretched wide beneath coarse, shaggy hair that tumbled in thick, dark waves around his broad face. His skin was weathered and rough, like aged leather, softened by countless suns and storms. Patches of dark hair thickly covered his arms and chest, blending into the wildness of his beard that framed a heavy jaw. The sheer size of his limbs was awe-inspiring. Muscles, knotted and bulging beneath the rugged surface, each movement slow and deliberate, like the shifting of a great stone. Most striking of all was the single, enormous eye centered in the middle of his forehead. It was a deep, dark orb, gleaming faintly even in the dim light, reflecting a world of fierce strength and primitive awareness. The eye held a raw intensity, a silent watchfulness that seemed to pierce the shadows and reach into the souls of those who dared enter his domain. His nose was broad and flattened, blending into thick brows that cast heavy shadows over that singular eye. His lips were wide and heavy, parting occasionally in a slow breath that echoed softly through the cavern. Despite his size and fearsome appearance, there was a slow, almost ponderous quality to his movements, a reminder that beneath the giant's exterior was a creature of simple, ancient nature. The cave's cool darkness wrapped around him like a cloak, highlighting the rugged textures of his skin and the sharp contrasts of light and shadow across his massive form. Every breath he took stirred the air with a quiet power, and the very stones seemed to resonate with the presence of the great Cyclops. Beyond the shadowed recesses of the great cave, a gentle, rustic world unfolded on, far removed from the weighty silence of the Cyclops' lair. In a rocky pen just outside the cavern's mouth, a small herd of goats grazed quietly. Their coats were thick and coarse, mottled in shades of white, cream, and soft gray, blending effortlessly with the dusty stones and hardy scrub that clung stubbornly to the craggy slopes. Each animal moved with a steady, calm rhythm, chewing slowly on tufts of sparse grass and tough leaves that the harsh land provided. The goats' hooves clattered softly against the uneven ground, stirring small clouds of fine dust that danced lazily in the sunbeams, filtering through the low-hanging branches. Their breath rose in gentle puffs, warm and faintly sweet, mingling with the earthy aroma of dry soil and wild herbs. Their eyes, bright and watchful, reflected an ancient intelligence simple, yet alert to the subtle movements of the world around them. Close by, the Cyclops' food lay scattered at a humble bounty, but nourishing in its own rough way. Large, round loaves of coarse bread rested on flat stones, their golden crusts cracked and dusty from the heat of the sun. The scent of baked grain lingered faintly, mingling with the sharper tang of salt and the earthy aroma of wild herbs crushed beneath heavy footsteps. Bowls of thick, creamy cheese sat nearby, their surfaces mottled with flecks of mold and pale blue veins, rich, pungent, and deeply savory. The cheeses had been fashioned by ancient, simple hands from the milk of the goats, curdled and pressed into rough shapes, and hung in the cool recesses of the cave to age slowly. Their textures ranged from soft and crumbly to firm and dense, each bite carrying layers of flavor sharpness tempered by sweetness, hints of the grassy pastures, and the mineral tang of the rocky soil. The air was thick with the mellow perfume of fermentation, a quiet testament to the cycle of life and sustenance. Scattered around were clusters of wild fruit small, dark berries bursting with juice and sweetness, the thin skins breaking easily to reveal rich, deep flavors. Sun-ripened figs, their flesh soft and honeyed, nestled alongside tangy olives plucked from gnarled trees that clung to the rocky slopes. These humble offerings formed a simple rustic feast that spoke of survival and the slow, patient rhythm of island life. Occasionally, the goats' low bleats punctuated the quieter, gentle, plaintive sound that echoed softly against the cavern walls. Their slow, deliberate movements and the steady rhythms of their grazing created a peaceful harmony with the sounds of wind in the leaves and distant crashing waves. The natural world here was raw and unrefined, yet it held a profound beauty in its resilience and simplicity. The food itself told stories of seasons past, of the sun's warmth coaxing life from stony soil, of water scarce but precious, and of the humble creatures and plants that thrive despite the harshness. The bread was baked from wild grain harvested in small quantities, the cheese crafted with care born from generations of tradition, and the fruits gathered by patient hands familiar with every leaf and branch. For Odysseus and his men, the sight and smell of these provisions stirred a complex mixture of feelings. The rustic bounty was far from the rich feasts of their homeland, yet it offered sustenance and a strange comfort. The simplicity of the food reflected the raw, untamed nature of the island itself, a place where survival was woven into every bite and breath, and where every meal was a quiet triumph against the wild. Amid this scene, the goats moved steadily, unhurried and content, embodying the slow passage of time on the island. Their presence was a living thread, connecting the land, the food, and the life it sustained in enduring cycle of growth, nourishment, and renewal. In the quiet stillness of the cavern, as shadows stretched long and mingled with the fading light, Odysseus sat apart from his men, his mind weaving a delicate and careful plan. The cave, massive and dark, seemed to hold its breath around him, the cool stone pressing gently against his skin, the faint echoes of dripping water marking time in the silence. His thoughts moved slowly but deliberately, each detail unfolding with precision like the threads of a tapestry. Before him lay a great wooden kluba, simple, rugged weapon carved from a massive olive tree trunk. The wood was thick and heavy, its surface rough with bark and hardened by age and weather. Its weight was familiar in his hands, solid and reassuring, the power of nature itself bound in a blunt, unyielding shape. Odysseus ran his fingers along the uneven grain, feeling the sturdy strength that could shatter bone or stone, yet also deliver measured, controlled force. The club was not crafted for elegance or grace, but for raw, decisive impact, a tool of survival and cunning. It embodied the very essence of Odysseus's approach: patient, resourceful, and thoughtful. The plan that took shape in his mind was simple in form but intricate in execution. He would use this club, sharpened and prepared, as the key to their escape from the cavern shadow. Near the edge of the cave, he had also secured a large wine skeena, heavy, bulbous vessel made from thick animal hide, tied carefully with strong cords. Inside, the wine sloshed gently, rich and dark, carrying the deep, fruity aroma of sun-ripened grapes pressed and aged with care. The scent was intoxicating, warm and inviting, a sharp contrast to the damp earth and cold stone of their surroundings. To Odysseus, this wine was more than a drink. It was a weapon of subtle power. He planned to use the wine as a means to lull the great Cyclops into a deep and heavy sleep, to soften the giant's fierce awareness and slow his massive limbs. The rich, sweet liquid would tempt the Cyclops' senses, dulling the sharpness of his singular eye and clouding his thoughts with the soothing haze of intoxication. It was a strategy born of intellect rather than brute force, a way to turn the enemy's strength into a vulnerability. Odysseus imagined the moments to come, the careful approach with the wine, the patient offering, the slow dimming of the Cyclops' fierce gaze. Then, the sharpened club, heated and ready, would become the instrument of their freedom. His mind traced each step with calm clarity. The careful timing, the coordination with his men, the quiet signals passed in the dim light. Around him, the cave held its ancient secrets, silent witnesses to the unfolding plan. The rough walls seemed to close in with a steady stillness, while the flickering shadows played on the stones like gentle flames. The smell of damp earth mixed with the rich aroma of wine and the faint, sharp scent of sharpened wood. Odysseus thought of his men, brave, weary, and trusting, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Their lives depended on his cunning, their hopes on his steady hand. The club and the wine were more than tools. They were symbols of survival, of hope, of the power of mind over might. He glanced at the gathered men, their faces pale but determined, eyes wide in the dim light. Each one understood the danger, but also the necessity of the plan. There was no rush, no reckless haste, only the slow, steady unfolding of careful strategy, like the turning of a great wheel that would soon set them free. The heavy wineskin was ready to be brought forward, the club sharpened and heated by the flickering firelight. Every detail had been considered: the timing of the blow, the silence required, the path of escape. Odysseus felt a quiet confidence, the calm that comes from knowing that every piece of the plan was in place, waiting only for the moment to unfold. And so, in the stillness of the cave, surrounded by shadows and silence, the great escape was poised to begin, born not of violence alone, but of patience, wit, and the enduring spirit of those who refused to be bound. As the heavy night settled over the cavern, a gentle hush wrapped the rocky walls, a quiet breath held in anticipation. Inside, the vast shadows shifted slowly as Odysseus and his men moved with careful grace, their footsteps soft against the cold stone floor. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and smoldering embers from their small hidden fire. The great Cyclops lay deeply asleep, his single eye closed beneath heavy lids, his breathing slow and steady like the pulse of the earth itself. The wine had worked its gentle magic, softening his senses and quieting the fierce vigilance that had once filled the cave. Around him, scattered stones and rough timbers rested untouched, the silence profound and unbroken. Odysseus led his men with measured calm, each step deliberate and sure. There was no rush, no sudden movements, only the soft rhythm of feet and breath blending into the quiet. Their hearts beat gently, steady as the waves lapping outside the cave's mouth. Every gesture was practiced and slow, a dance woven from patience and careful timing. The sharpened club, still warm from the fire, was hidden securely as they gathered their few possessions. The men exchanged soft whispers, voices low and reassuring, weaving an invisible thread of calm between them. Their eyes met briefly, sharing trust and resolve without the need for hurried commands or anxious words. As they moved toward the cavern's entrance, the cool night air greeted them like a familiar friend. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the sea filled the silence, mingling with the quiet footsteps on sand and stone. The stars above shimmered faintly through the swaying branches, casting gentle patterns of light that danced on the ground. Outside, the world was still and waiting an embrace of calm after the shadows of the cave. The men felt the soft breeze on their skin, the taste of salt and freedom in the air. Their steps quickened just slightly, buoyed by the growing promise of escape and the whisper of open skies. Odysseus moved at their head, his eyes scanning the horizon with quiet vigilance, yet his demeanor remained relaxed and composed. The path back to their ships was clear and familiar, marked by the soft imprint of their journey. Each footfall was a small victory, a gentle reclaiming of their will and purpose. There was no panic, no frantic haste, only the steady unfolding of hope and determination. The sea called softly in the distance, its waves singing a lullaby of journey and return. The night air carried the subtle scents of wild herbs and damp earth, wrapping the men in a soothing cloak of nature's own making. As they slipped away from the cave, the memories of shadow and silence faded behind them. The weight of captivity lifted, replaced by the lightness of movement and the quiet joy of freedom regained. Their breaths deepened with relief, their spirits lifted by the gentle rhythm of progress. The journey back to their ships was a quiet procession beneath the vast, starry sky. The soft sounds of the night, the rustling leaves, the distant call of an owl, the gentle crash of waves wove a peaceful soundtrack to their escape. Every moment was tender, deliberate, a careful unfolding from darkness into light. And so, without haste or harshness, Odysseus and his men slipped free from the cave's shadowed grasp. The soft night embraced them as they moved forward, carrying with them the quiet strength of hope and the gentle promise of the sea's endless horizon. The ships of Odysseus glided through waters that seemed to hold their breath, as if the sea itself awaited something extraordinary. On the horizon, a new silhouette emerged, the island of Aeolus, keeper of the winds, a place steeped in myth and shrouded in gentle mystery. The island rose smoothly from the sea, a jewel crowned with soft green hills and crowned by towering cliffs that caught the sunlight in shimmering cascades. The air grew still and clear, carrying a faint, sweet scent of blooming flowers mingled with the crispness of salt and fresh breeze. As the ships approached the shore, the water deepened to a rich, glassy blue, reflecting the sky's endless expanse and the wisps of clouds that drifted lazily overhead. The waves caressed the hulls with tender murmurs, soft and rhythmic, like a whispered greeting from the island itself. The men felt a subtle shift in the air, a calm energy that settled over them, soothing and expectant. Odysseus and his crew stepped ashore with quiet reverence. The ground beneath their feet was soft and mossy, a thick carpet of emerald green that stretched beneath ancient olive trees and fragrant herbs. The island seemed alive, with gentle motion leaves rustling in delicate patterns, the distant call of birds weaving through the stillness, and a faint, persistent hum that filled the air like a secret song. Ahead, nestled among the rolling hills, stood the palace of Aeolus, a structure both magnificent and serene. Built of gleaming white stone, its smooth walls caught the sunlight and shimmered softly, like waves frozen in time. Tall columns rose in graceful arcs, supporting broad terraces that overlooked the sparkling sea. Windows, framed by delicate carvings, caught beams of light, casting intricate patterns of shadow and glow that danced gently on the marble floors. The palace was surrounded by gardens where fragrant flowers bloomed in endless colors. Soft pinks, deep purples, and bright yellows, their petals fluttering softly in the ever-present breeze. The air was filled with the mingling scents of jasmine, rosemary, and wild thyme, blending into a fragrant symphony that soothed the senses and calmed the mind. As Odysseus and his men approached, the gates opened quietly, revealing Aeolus himself, a figure both powerful and graceful. The god stood tall and poised, his robes flowing like clouds caught in a gentle wind. His hair, dark as the night sky, rippled softly, and his eyes gleamed with a light both ancient and knowing. Around him, the very air seemed to shimmer and stir, carrying the subtle power of the winds he commanded. Aeolus welcomed them with a serene smile, his voice calm and melodic like a soft breeze through the trees. He spoke of the sea and sky, of the unseen forces that shape the world, and of the delicate balance that holds the winds in their invisible chains. His words were a gentle unfolding of mysteries, whispered secrets carried on the breath of the air. The god led Odysseus and his crew through the palace, where the walls seemed alive with the shifting patterns of light and shadow, echoing the dance of the winds themselves. Here, jars and sacks lined the hall's vessels that contained the very winds of the world. From gentle zephyrs to fierce storms, each breath of air was held captive, waiting to be released by Aeolus's command. Odysseus listened with quiet awe, feeling the immense power held within these simple containers. The winds were no longer distant forces but tangible, living things, wild spirits bound by care and wisdom. Aeolus offered them a gift, a great sack containing the winds that would carry the ships safely toward their home, a precious trust bestowed with solemn promise. As the men prepared to leave, the air around them seemed charged with possibility. The soft rustle of leaves, the whisper of unseen breezes, and the distant crash of waves all blended into a harmonious chorus, a song of freedom and journey, of wind and water dancing together beneath the endless sky. The visit to Aeolus was not just a moment in their voyage, but a quiet blessing, a pause filled with reverence and hope. It was a reminder of the delicate forces that shaped their fate, and the enduring strength found in harmony with the natural world. The palace of Aeolus breathed with a quiet life all its own. Sunlight streamed gently through tall, open windows, spilling across the smooth marble floors in shifting patches of gold and warmth. Each ray seemed to dance softly as it passed through the delicate latticework, casting intricate patterns of light and shadow that moved slowly with the passing hours. The air was filled with a subtle glow, a shimmering veil that wrapped the space in gentle serenity. Every corner of the great hall caught these flickers of light, reflecting them in quiet whispers on the polished surfaces of stone columns and the delicate carvings that adorned the walls. The brightness was never harsh or overwhelming. Rather, it caressed the eyes with the softness of dawn, inviting calm and contemplation. A gentle hum filled the space, a sound both soothing and mysterious. It was the constant whispering murmur of the winds themselves, woven into the very fabric of the palace. Soft currents of air twisted and curled through the open arches, carrying with them faint scents of sea salt, blooming flowers, and fresh herbs. The breeze stirred the hems of flowing tapestries and set delicate leaves in motion, sending ripples of sound like a quiet melody. In this house of air and light, silence was never complete. Instead, it was filled with subtle movement, the faint rustle of fabric, the soft flutter of leaves, the distant sigh of a breath carried on the wind. These whispers wove together into a calming symphony that embraced all who entered, soothing the spirit as surely as a lullaby. The walls seemed alive with the dance of air currents, visible only in the gentle sway of suspended crystals and the slow spin of finely crafted mobiles. Each element caught the light and wind, turning the invisible into delicate, shimmering patterns. The atmosphere was one of quiet motion, a perpetual flow that balanced stillness and movement in perfect harmony. Walking through the halls, one could feel the invisible touch of the wind school and light against the skin, playful yet calming. It was as if the very breath of the world passed through this place, carrying the secrets of distant seas and open skies. Here, time itself seemed to slow, folding gently into the endless dance of air and light. The sack that Aeolus entrusted to Odysseus was no ordinary container. It was a vessel of immense power, crafted with divine care and subtle magic. Made from thick, supple leather, it gleamed faintly in the soft light of the palace, its surface smooth yet marked with the faintest impressions patterns like swirling gusts of air, delicately embossed by hands, both skilled and sacred. The leather was dark, almost black, but shimmered with hints of deep blue and silver, as if the very breath of the sky had been woven into its fibers. The bag was large and heavy, its weight a silent testament to the mighty winds contained within. Thick cords of braided gold and white twisted around its neck, binding it tightly and intricately. Each knot was perfectly tied, secure against the slightest chance of escape, and the cords gleamed softly, catching the light with every subtle movement. The ends of the cords hung like delicate tassels, swaying gently even in the still air. From within the sack came faint murmurs, the restless sighs and whispers of the winds themselves, pressing gently against the leather walls. Occasionally, a soft rush of air slipped past the seals, carrying a cool, fresh scent that stirred the senses like a distant breeze on a warm day. The sound was never harsh or wild, but a gentle, constant breathing, a reminder of the invisible forces held captive inside. The sack seemed almost alive, pulsing subtly with the energy of the winds it contained. Its surface rippled now and then, as if stirred by the restless spirits trapped within, eager to be released and carry the ships onward. The very air around it shimmered faintly, vibrating with a power both contained and ready to be unleashed. Aeolus placed the bag carefully in the hands of Odysseus, his gaze steady and knowing. This gift was both a blessing and a responsibility, a key to harnessing the chaotic dance of the elements, to guiding the voyage through tempests and calm alike. The bag's dark, shimmering leather held the promise of swift passage and safe return, wrapped in the mysteries of the unseen winds. Aeolus, the keeper of the winds, spoke softly to Odysseus and his men, his voice like a gentle breeze weaving through the ancient halls of his palace. He told them stories of the great winds, those unseen spirits that roam the skies and shape the very world itself with its own nature, character, and power, bound in delicate balance by the will of the gods. First came Boreas, the north wind, mighty and cold. Aeolus described Boreas as a fierce yet noble force, sweeping down from the icy realms beyond the mountains and forests. His breath was sharp and chilling, carrying the scent of snow and frost, and his wings beat with a thunderous roar. Boreas was the herald of winter storms, shaking the trees and stirring the seas into wild tempests. Yet, Aeolus explained, Boreas also brought renewal, clearing the old to make way for the new, and carrying the crisp, fresh air that invigorated all living things. Then there was Zephyrus, the gentle west wind, beloved by mortals and gods alike. Aeolus's voice softened as he spoke of Zephyrus's tender caress, the warm breath of spring and early summer. Zephyrus whispered through blossoming gardens and ripening fields, carrying the sweet fragrance of flowers and fresh earth. His touch was soft and nurturing, coaxing life to awaken and flourish. Unlike Boreas, Zephyrus was a friend to sailors and travelers, guiding ships gently over calm seas and bringing the peaceful weather that made long voyages possible. From the east came Eurus, the unpredictable wind, neither entirely fierce nor gentle. Aeolus spoke of Eurus as a wild spirit, restless and capricious, whose moods could shift like the changing sky. Sometimes Eurus brought sudden gusts that startled the trees and tossed the waves, while at other times he faded into a barely perceptible sigh. Sailors both respected and feared Eurus, for his presence could turn a calm day into a moment of challenge and surprise. Yet, even Eurus was part of the greater harmony, a necessary force that reminded all of the sea's ever-changing nature. Lastly, Aeolus told them of Lotus, the south wind, bearer of warmth and summer rains. Lotus was the gentle bringer of life-giving showers and soft storms, filling the earth with water and nurturing the fields. His breath was heavy with the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers, and his arrival signaled the shifting of seasons and the rhythms of growth. Though his rains could sometimes swell rivers and stir storms, Lotus was revered as a vital force, balancing drought with plenty. Aeolus explained how these winds were more than mere air and movement. They were living spirits, bound by divine power, but endowed with personalities and tempers. They whispered in the ears of gods and mortals, carrying messages and omens. They could be calmed or roused, held or unleashed by those who understood their nature. He showed Odysseus the vessels that contained these wind sacs and jars, imbued with ancient magic, each holding the breath of a particular wind. The keeper of the winds himself was charged with their care, ensuring balance and order, releasing them only when the time was right. This was no simple task, for the winds were wild and capricious, restless as the waves they stirred. Aeolus spoke too of the wind's role in the stories of old, how gods and heroes had learned to harness or be humbled by them. He told of great storms that had shaped lands, of gentle breezes that had guided fleets, and of how the winds carried the very breath of the world. Their voices were the chorus of the skies, singing songs that only the wise could hear and interpret. To Odysseus and his men, this tale was a reminder of the vast and mysterious forces that governed their journey. The winds were not merely elements to be battled or endured, but powerful allies and ancient forces woven into the fabric of life. Their respect for Aeolus grew, as did their understanding of the delicate balance between man and nature, between control and surrender. The story of the mythological winds lingered in their minds like a soft, melodian, ever-present reminder that their fate was tied to these unseen spirits, and that wisdom lay in patience, respect, and harmony with the world's breath. With the precious sack of winds carefully secured aboard their ships, Odysseus and his men felt the gentle power of Aeolus's blessing guiding them forward. The very air seemed charged with possibility, filled with the promise of swift passage and safe return. The sails caught the breath of the winds, and the fleet moved gracefully over the shimmering waves, the scent of salt and freedom filling their lungs. Yet, as the journey unfolded, a quiet tension grew among them, and curiosity mingled with fatigue, and the long voyage wore on their spirits. Though Odysseus had entrusted the winds to their care with solemn words and careful instructions, the weight of the unknown stirred restless thoughts. The sack, sealed tight and bound by strong cords, remained a mysterious presence on the ship's deck, its dark surface seeming to pulse faintly with the breath of contained storms. One night, under a sky veiled with stars, the men's curiosity overcame caution. Whispers passed among them, soft and hesitant, as they gathered near the hidden sack. Questions and doubts murmured like a secret tide. What if the winds could be freed to speed their voyage? Could they not release the breath of storms and breezes to carry them swiftly home? Before Odysseus could intervene, a careless hand loosened the cords. The sack unfurled suddenly, releasing a mighty gust that burst forth like a tempest unleashed. The winds rushed out in a wild, swirling dance. Boreas howled, Eurus raged, Lotus swept in warm torrents, and Zephyrus fled in gentle sisal, breaking free into the night sky. The ships lurched and rocked violently, caught in the chaotic embrace of the freed winds. The men struggled to regain control, their voices rising in alarm, but the sea had turned fierce and unforgiving. The once gentle journey became a battle against unseen forces, waves crashing and tossing the fleet in relentless fury. The winds, once their allies, now roared with wild abandon, pushing the ships away from home and into the vast, uncertain horizon. Odysseus stood firm amid the tempest, his mind sharp and steady despite the turmoil. He called to his men with calm authority, urging patience and resolve. Though the loss of Aeolus's gift was a grave setback, their spirit remained unbroken. With steady hands and unyielding hearts, they weathered the storm, holding fast to the hope that the winds might one day again guide them safely to Ithaca's shores. The storm raged on for days, but slowly the fury began to wane. The sea's anger softened to rolling swells, the sky cleared, and the winds settled into gentle breezes once more. The fleet found itself far from the island of Aeolus, pushed to the edges of the known world, yet still afloat and determined. With heavy hearts but unwavering hope, Odysseus and his men turned their faces toward the distant horizon. The journey was far from over, but the lessons of the winds had deepened their understanding the delicate balance of nature, the cost of carelessness, and the strength found in patience and unity. And so, beneath a vast and endless sky, the fleet sailed onward, carried, not just by winds, but by the enduring spirit of those who dare to seek their way home. The ships drew slowly toward the shore of a new and imposing land, their hulls cutting quietly through the gentle swell of the sea. The coastline rose sharply from the water, rugged cliffs and dense forests standing like silent sentinels watching over the edge of the world. The air was thick with the scent of pine and wet earth, mingled with a faint saltiness carried from the waves. A calm stillness hung heavy here, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting. Odysseus and his men prepared to make landfall with care, their movements measured and deliberate. The oars dipped softly, and the small boats edged closer to a rocky harbor nestled beneath towering cliffs. The water here was dark and deep, reflecting the brooding sky above, and the shadow of the cliffs cast long shapes over the bay. As the ships approached the shore, an uneasy feeling settled over the crew. The usual welcoming sounds of birds and insects were absent. The silence was unnatural, thick and heavy. The men exchanged wary glances, their eyes scanning the edges of the dense forest where twisted branches seemed to reach out like grasping hands. The trees swayed without wind, their shadows shifting ominously despite the still air. The rocky beach was strewn with broken shells and scattered driftwood, but no footprints or signs of life. The distant murmur of the sea was the only sound, punctuated by a faint, low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath their feet. The atmosphere was charged with a quiet tension, a subtle warning carried in the very air. Odysseus sensed the change instantly, a shift in the mood of the land, a silent herald of danger lurking just beyond sight. Yet, with steady calm, he urged his men forward, careful to keep their spirits steady, even as the shadow of unease grew. The fleet anchored cautiously, the ropes creaking softly as the boats settled into the dark waters. Around them, the landscape held secret dark caves carved into the cliffs, dense thickets concealing unknown shapes, and the faint glint of stone structures half swallowed by overgrowth. The natural beauty of the place was tinged with an undercurrent of menace, a reminder that here, the unknown awaited with quiet patience. Beyond the tangled forest and rocky cliffs, the city of the Laestrygonians revealed itself like a sleeping giant, vast, imposing, and ancient. From afar, its towering walls rose high above the land, carved from great blocks of gray stone weathered by centuries of sun, wind, and rain. The fortifications stretched in a sweeping arc, following the contours of the rocky hills, as if the city itself had grown from the earth like a colossal stone sentinel guarding the coast. The gates were immense, wrought from heavy timbers bound by thick iron bands that gleamed faintly in the filtered sunlight. Their hinges creaked softly in the quiet air, suggesting both age and enduring strength. Flanking the entrance, colossal statue-hulking figures of warriors and beasts stood frozen in silent watch, their features rough-hewn but filled with a fierce, eternal vigilance. Inside the walls, the city's streets unfolded in a labyrinth of stone and shadow. Narrow alleys wound between massive buildings constructed from the same cold, unyielding rock. Roofs were flat and broad, covered with large slabs of stone that blended seamlessly with the walls. Balconies jutted out like ledges on a cliff, supported by thick pillars carved with ancient symbols and spiraling patterns. The air carried the faint scent of dust and stone warmed by the sun, mingled with the earthy aroma of moss and wild plants that grew in cracks and crevices. The architecture was bold and functional, built for defense and endurance rather than comfort or elegance. Towers rose here and there, their narrow windows like slits watching the horizon, while the main square was a vast open space paved with irregular stones worn smooth by countless feet. Around it, the buildings clustered close, their shadows creating cool pockets of shade amid the brightness. Yet, despite its fortress-like nature, the city bore subtle marks of life and culture. Intricate mosaics adorned some walls, depicting scenes of hunting and battle, gods and heroes, waves and winds. Carved reliefs told stories in silent stone, telling of the Laestrygonians' strength and history. small gardens rare, and precious ware tucked between buildings, with hardy shrubs and flowers offering touches of green amid the gray. The city felt ancient and enduring, a place shaped by strength and survival, where every stone spoke of resilience. It was a realm of contrast, harsh and formidable on the outside, yet quietly alive with the echoes of those who had lived and thrived within its walls. Without warning, the quiet of the city was broken. A distant rumble stirred the air, a sound that grew slowly but steadily, like the shifting of ancient stones beneath the earth. The men paused, senses sharpening, hearts steadying as a faint movement caught their eyes beyond the walls. Shadows lengthened and shifted. Shapes emerged in the dim light, slow and heavy, yet unmistakably alive. Odysseus felt the subtle tension rise within the group, a ripple of unease, gentle but insistent. His voice, calm and low, urged caution. There was no rush, no frantic scattering, only the quiet decision to withdraw, to return to the safety of the ships and the open sea. The men moved with measured steps, careful not to draw attention, their bodies folding into the familiar rhythm of retreat. The narrow streets seemed to close behind them, the heavy stones muffling their passage. The flicker of torchlight behind the walls hinted at the growing awareness of their presence. Yet the fleet held steady, guided by the steady hand of their leader. The forest's edge drew near the threshold, between the wild land and the waiting sea. The sounds of pursuit remained distant, muted by the thick canopy of trees and the rustle of leaves. The men quickened their pace, yet without haste, their movements deliberate and controlled. Reaching the shoreline, a sense of relief softened their steps. The familiar sight of the ships bobbing gently in the water brought a renewed calm. The sea's steady breath promised refuge, a place where they could gather strength and prepare anew. Odysseus stood at the prow, his gaze sweeping the horizon with quiet determination. The danger was real, but not overwhelming. It was a moment to respect and evade, not to confront. The men, their breaths steadying, embraced the promise of the sea's protection, their hearts anchored in hope and resilience. As the men slipped away from the shadowed cliffs and the looming walls of the city, the open sea stretched before them like a vast, welcoming embrace. The waters, calm and steady now, held a quiet promise, an endless expanse where danger lost its grip and freedom found its voice. The gentle rocking of the ship soothed tired limbs and weary minds, weaving a lullaby of movement that eased tension and fear. The sea's scent filled the air, fresh and salty, carrying the distant calls of seabirds and the soft splash of waves against the hulls. It was a scent that spoke of journeys and horizons, of the endless rhythm of tides and winds. The men breathed deeply, drawing strength from the steady pulse of the water beneath them, the cool spray that kissed their faces like a tender touch. Here, in the vast openness, the dangers of land could not reach them. The sea wrapped around the fleet like a protective cloak, its vastness a shield against the shadows that lurked on distant shores. The horizon stretched wide and free, painted in soft shades of blue and silver beneath the gentle light of the sun. Odysseus stood at the prow of his ship, his eyes scanning the endless water with calm assurance. The sea was both path and refuge, a living force that carried them onward and held them safe. It was a place where the past dangers dissolved into the distance, and the future gleamed with quiet hope. Around him, the men settled into the steady rhythm of the voyage. The steady beat of oars dipped into the water, the whisper of sails filled with wind, and the murmur of voices low and relaxed all wove together into a peaceful symphony. The sea became their sanctuary, a realm of light and shadow, sound and silence, where they could breathe freely and gather strength for the journey ahead. In this vast and gentle world, the fleet found a new kind of safety not in walls or weapons, but in the endless embrace of the water and sky. The sea held their hopes, their fears, and their dreams, carrying them forward beneath the ever-changing dance of clouds and light. The ships drifted into a tranquil bay, embraced by a forest that stretched deep into the heart of the island. Tall trees, ancient and grand, stood like silent guardians, their thick trunks wrapped in vines and crowned with lush, emerald canopies. The sunlight filtered through the leaves in soft, golden beams, casting mottled patterns on the mossy forest floor below. The air was rich with the scent of damp earth, fragrant blossoms, and the subtle, lingering aroma of herbs and invitation to rest and wonder. Amid this living cathedral of green, a dwelling emerged, woven seamlessly into the natural world. Circe's house was no ordinary abode. It was a sanctuary of calm and mystery, nestled in a small clearing surrounded by towering oaks and whispering pines. The walls were built from smooth timber and rounded stones, worn gently by time and nature's hand. Moss and delicate flowering plants clung to the roof, blending the house into the forest as if it had grown there from the earth itself. The windows were wide and arched, framed by entwined branches carved with intricate patterns of leaves and animals. Soft light spilled outward, mingling with the gentle rustle of the forest. A small stone path, edged with wildflowers and soft ferns, led from the shore to the door, winding through the trees like a gentle breath through the woods. Inside, the house was a place of serene beauty. Walls of warm wood held shelves lined with jars and bottles, each filled with strange and wondrous content spouters, shimmering like stardust, liquids glowing faintly in hues of amber, emerald, and sapphire. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and spices, a comforting blend that spoke of healing and hidden knowledge. Soft tapestries, woven with patterns of stars and plants, draped the walls, and cushions of embroidered silk and velvet invited quiet repose. The hearth, built from river stones smoothed by water's passage, held a gentle fire that crackled softly, filling the space with warmth and light. Outside the windows, the forest whispered its secrets, the chirp of birds, the scurry of small creatures, and the steady sway of branches in the breeze. Around the house, a garden bloomed with life and color. Circe's herbs grew tall and fragrant lavender, sage, thyme, and rue mingled with rarer plants whose names were known only to her. Small statues of animals peered from the greenery, foxes, owls, and serpents carved from stone-silent sentinels watching over the magical sanctuary. The garden hummed softly with bees and the flutter of butterfly wings, a gentle symphony of nature's pulse. This was a place apart from the world's stryphia, refuge of peace and enchantment, where the boundaries between the ordinary and the mystical blurred. It was a home woven from earth and light, shadow, and scent, a quiet haven where every leaf, stone, and breath of air held the promise of ancient magic and whispered stories yet to unfold. The life around Circe's dwelling was alive with gentle motion and vibrant color, as if the very forest whispered secrets of enchantment and healing. Small creatures moved quietly among the trees, and underbrush nimble foxes with eyes gleaming like polished amber, silent owls perched upon ancient branches, and rabbits whose soft fur blended perfectly with the dappled light. Their presence was both natural and mysterious, as though they were guardians of the magical sanctuary, watching and waiting with knowing calm. Birdsong filled the air, a delicate melody weaving through the leaves. Brightly colored songbirds flitted from branch to branch, their feathers catching the sunlight in flashes of emerald, ruby, and sapphire. Occasionally, the soft flap of wings disturbed the stillness as gentle doves cooed nearby, adding a peaceful rhythm to the sounds of the forest. The garden surrounding the house was a tapestry of herbs and flowers, each chosen with care and purpose. Tall stalks of lavender swayed in the breeze, releasing their soothing fragrance that wrapped the air like a comforting shawl. Clusters of sage with dusty green leaves grew thick and fragrant, their scent sharp and cleansing. Sprigs of thyme and rosemary mingled, filling the space with fresh, woody aromas. Nearby, delicate blooms of chamomile nodded gently, their golden centers glowing softly. Among these familiar herbs grew rarer plants, nightshade with its dark, glossy berries, mandrake, its twisted roots hidden beneath the earth, and belladonna with pale, haunting flowers. Each herb was tended with reverence, harvested at the perfect moment, dried carefully, or crushed fresh for use in the many potions that filled Circe's shelves. Inside the house, the shelves were lined with vessels of every shape and size, glass bottles catching the light like precious gems, clay jars sealed with wax, and small leather pouches tied with thin cords. The air was heavy with the mingled scents of these concoctions, sweet, bitter, spicy, and earthy, each promising healing, protection, or transformation. Circe herself moved among these bottles with practiced ease, her fingers delicate but sure. She prepared potions in small cauldrons that bubbled softly, releasing tendrils of fragrant steam. Each brew was a careful blend of ingredients, petals, roots, resins, and secret essences gathered from the island and beyond. The colors of the potions shifted like liquid rainbows, from deep violets to shimmering golds, inviting both curiosity and caution. The process was slow and deliberate, a ritual of patience and precision. Circe whispered words of power, ancient incantations woven with the breath of the forest and the pulse of the earth. The potions simmered and changed, each step imbued with meaning and magic. Outside, animals sometimes approached the garden's edge, drawn by the scents or the gentle presence of their mistress. A small white deer with luminous eyes stepped cautiously between the herbs, its soft hooves barely touching the ground. Birds perched nearby, watching with quiet intelligence, as if understanding the deep bond between Circe and the natural world. This interplay of life, herbs, and magic created a realm of harmony and mystery, a place where healing and transformation were woven into the very fabric of existence. It was a sanctuary of subtle power, where nature's gifts were honored and used with wisdom and care. The men of Odysseus, weary from their long journey, found themselves drawn into the quiet enchantment of Circe's realm. Her presence was calm and serene, a soothing balm after the turmoil of the seas. The house, with its warm light and fragrant air, welcomed them not as prisoners, but as guests caught in a spell both subtle and strange. One by one, some of the men partook of Circe's mysterious gifts, their senses gently swayed by the potions she offered. Without drama or fear, their forms shifted in quiet, fluid motions. Human shapes softened and rounded, voices changed, and bodies grew stout and bristled. They became creatures of the earth, animals with curious eyes and slow, contented movement spigs in gentle repose rather than beasts of chaos. The transformation was neither cruel nor violent. but a natural unfolding under the island's mysterious magic, a gentle surrender to the rhythm of this enchanted place. Odysseus watched this strange change with a steady heart and clear mind. Though the magic held his men in its quiet thrall, he remained resolute. He moved through Circe's house with respect, engaging with her not as an adversary, but as a wise and powerful guardian of her domain. Their conversations were soft and measured talks of fate, power, and the delicate balance between freedom and enchantment. Evenings in Circe's home were filled with ritual and quiet beauty. The hearth's warm glow cast dancing shadows on the walls, while the air carried the mingled scents of herbs and burning wood. Circe performed rites of blessing and protection, her hands weaving patterns in the air, her voice rising and falling like a gentle song. The men listened, their spirits eased by the rhythmic cadence, lulled by the soothing atmosphere. Meals were shared in a calm harmony, foods fragrant and nourishing, prepared with care from the island's gifts. The transformed men moved with peaceful grace, while the others sat quietly, united by a shared sense of temporary refuge. The nights were long and soft, filled with dreams woven from the island's magic and the distant calls of night birds. Yet, beneath the calm surface, Odysseus's resolve never faltered. He knew their journey must continue, and with patient wisdom, he sought a way to free his men and prepare for departure. Circe, recognizing his strength and purpose, bestowed upon him her blessing gifts of guidance and protection for the voyage ahead. Her eyes held warmth and understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond forged between guest and host. When the time came to leave, the farewell was gentle and respectful. The transformed men were restored to their human forms, the magic lifting like morning mist under the sun's touch. The forest seemed to breathe a soft farewell as the ships were readied once more, sails catching the breeze with hopeful promise. Odysseus stood at the prow, Circe's blessings echoing in his heart as the fleet slipped from the island's embrace. The sea welcomed them back with calm waves and open horizons. The island faded behind them, a place of mystery and magic, rest and renewal, a brief pause on their long voyage home. Beneath the world of the living lies a realm shrouded in shadow and silence, the Underworld, where the souls of the departed dwell in quiet rest. Odysseus and his men arrived at its threshold under a sky heavy with dusk, the air thick with a solemn stillness that seemed to hold time itself. Before them stretched a dark plain, bordered by twisted trees, whose leafless branches clawed toward a clouded sky. The ground beneath their feet was cold and heavy, covered in ash and fallen leaves muffling their steps. A slow, mournful wind whispered faint echoes voices from far away, sighing through the hollow spaces between the stones. Odysseus prepared the ritual, moving with calm purpose amid the circle of drawn symbols etched carefully into the earth. At the center lay offerings: fine barley, sweet honey, dark wine, and the blood of a sacrificed black ram, gifts meant to beckon the spirits from their shadowed realm. The men stood silent, their breath steady and low, as Odysseus spoke the ancient word-soft incantations that carried on the wind like a quiet song. His voice was steady and measured, a bridge between worlds, weaving a thread of light through the deep darkness. The air around them thickened, charged with an unseen power, as the boundary between life and death grew thin. Slowly, the shadows deepened, and pale figures began to emerge, ghostly shapes, drifting silently toward the circle. Their forms were hazy, flickering like candlelight, eyes dim pools reflecting lost memories. The spirits came not with fear or anger, but with a solemn grace, drawn by the sacred rite and the call of remembrance. Among them moved the spirits of warriors and kin, friends and strangers, all bound by the quiet passage from life to death. The air grew heavy with the weight of stories untold, regrets whispered, and the faintest glimmers of hope. Beyond the veil where the spirits gathered, the underworld stretched vast and shadowed, a realm where time seemed to fold upon itself, and silence reigned with a solemn, unyielding presence. The landscape was stark yet hauntingly beautiful, a place of muted colors and gentle gloom. Endless plains of gray ash and pale stones rolled beneath a heavy, cloud-laden sky that barely let through the faintest light. Twisted trees, their branches bare and reaching like bony fingers, cast long, wavering shadows across the land. Pools of still black water reflected the overcast heavens, mirroring the quiet vastness and the weight of eternity. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of earth and forgotten dreams. Here, the souls of the departed found a place of rest, neither joyous nor sorrowful, but a tranquil pause between worlds. They moved slowly, like drifting mist, their forms translucent and shimmering with a pale, otherworldly glow. Some sat by the banks of quiet rivers, their eyes distant and thoughtful, while others wandered aimlessly, whispering faint echoes of lives once lived. Odysseus and his men felt the heavy hush of the place settle over them. The undercurrent of loss was palpable, but so was a strange comfort, the promise of peace beyond the struggles of mortal life. The shadows held both memory and release, wrapping all in a solemn embrace. The landscape itself seemed to breathe in slow rhythms, the gentle sigh of unseen winds stirring the dust, the soft rustle of distant leaves. It was a place of endings and beginnings, where the veil between light and dark was thin and shimmering. Amid this muted world, the souls awaited, silent witnesses to the passage of time and the secrets held beneath the surface. As Odysseus ventured deeper into the realm of shadows, the air grew heavier with the weight of ancient wisdom and silent sorrow. Before him appeared figures, both familiar and revered spirits who lingered between worlds, carrying the echoes of mortal lives and the whispers of prophecy. Among them stood Tiresias, the blind seer whose gaze pierced the veils of time and fate. Though his eyes were closed, his presence was sharp and commanding, a calm authority emanating from the stillness around him. His robes, flowing and pale, seemed woven from mist itself, and his voice, when he spoke, was soft yet unwavering, a beacon of knowledge in the twilight realm. Beside Tiresias stood the spirit of Odysseus's mother, Anticlea, whose gentle face bore the traces of love and loss. Her eyes, filled with both warmth and sorrow, met her son's with a tender understanding that bridged the divide between life and death. Her presence brought a quiet comfort, a fleeting return to the embrace of home even in this shadowed place. Odysseus spoke with reverence and longing, seeking guidance and the strength to face the trials yet to come. Tiresias' words flowed like a calm river, weaving prophecies and warnings with care and clarity. His voice painted visions of the future, the perils that awaited, the choices that would shape destiny, and the hope that could endure through darkness. His mother's spirit listened with gentle grace, her silent support a balm to Odysseus's weary heart. Their reunion was a moment suspended in time, a fragile blend of memory, love, and the unyielding passage of fate. In this solemn meeting, the weight of the underworld seemed to ease, replaced by the light of understanding and the quiet strength born of connection. Odysseus drew from their presence a renewed sense of purpose, a calm resolve to continue his journey with courage and wisdom. In the quiet realm of shadows, memories surfaced like gentle wave-soft echoes of days long past, mingling with the present stillness. Odysseus found himself surrounded by visions of home and hearth, faces familiar and dear rising from the depths of his heart. The laughter of his youth, the tender smile of loved ones, the warmth of a father's embrace all, these memories wove around him like a comforting cloak against the coldness of the underworld. Yet beneath the warmth lay a gentle sorrow, a quiet ache born of loss and separation. The knowledge that these moments were but fleeting shadows deepened the weight in his chest, reminding him of the long journey still ahead. His mother's face lingered in his mind, her silent farewell, the hope she carried even as death claimed her. It was a sorrow without bitterness, a tender mourning for what was and what might never be again. Amid this sorrow, a surprising warmth blossomed. It was the warmth of love that transcends even the boundaries of life and death, a bond unbroken by time or fate. The presence of those lost was a light in the darkness, a steady flame guiding the way through the shadowed paths. Odysseus felt their strength mingling with his own, a quiet encouragement to press onward. The underworld's gloom softened around him, touched by the glow of these gentle memories. The sorrow did not weigh him down but lifted him, a reminder that even in the deepest night, light endures. The land of shadows became a place of reflection, of healing, and of quiet hope. With each breath, Odysseus drew in this warmth, letting it fill his heart and steady his spirit. The journey through the realm of the dead was not merely one of shadows, but of light, a passage through sorrow toward understanding and renewal. With the final words of guidance from Tiresias echoing softly in his mind, and the warmth of his mother's presence still lingering like a gentle embrace, Odysseus felt the time had come to leave the quiet shadows behind. The underworld, vast and somber, seemed to bow in silent farewell as he turned toward the path that would lead him back to the living world. The air grew lighter, the heaviness of the dark realm lifting slowly like morning mist before the rising sun. The twisted trees and shadowed plains faded gently into a soft twilight glow, and the distant murmurs of flowing waters welcomed him home. Each step forward was steady and calm, the quiet rhythm of movement blending with the whispering winds that seemed to guide him onward. Around him the spirits receded gracefully, their pale forms fading into the depths from which they came. The realm of shades was no longer a place of sorrow but a passage, a bridge between the past and the future, between memory and hope. Odysseus carried with him the lessons and love he had found there, a strengthened spirit ready to face the trials still ahead. As he emerged from the depths, the first light of dawn greeted him warmly. The world of living breath and color spread before his eyes, the vast sea glittering beneath the sun, the scent of salt and earth filling his lungs anew. The journey from the underworld was a return not just in body, but in spirit, a renewal of purpose and strength. Odysseus stood tall, the quiet power of the realm behind him, and stepped forward into the light of day. The path home stretched wide and open, carried by hope and the enduring fire of his will.